welcome to Whispers of Ink. I'm Machado de Assis, and now, I will read one of my stories.
Let's start with the book The Past, which is part of my novels collection. Chapter 1. The dinner ended at 6:30. It was still daylight, and most of the guests had gone down to the garden. One of them, Lieutenant Captain Luis Pinto, stayed behind in the living room to talk with the host, Commander Valadares. The commander was a heavy and calm man, for whom digestion was a serious, almost scientific matter. "And do you plan to travel again?" the commander asked, continuing the conversation that dessert had interrupted. "Not now. Unless the government orders me to sail again. I don't expect to need another leave, and in any case, I wouldn't go to Europe unless I was sick. But you enjoyed it so much that I need to rest." "In 42 seconds, sir." "That's not old age, but it's not the time for adventures anymore. A second trip would be a real foolishness." The commander didn't agree or disagree with his guest's words. He opened his snuff box, took a pinch, and asked the naval officer about some details of his trip. The officer satisfied his curiosity by telling him a page from his memories as a tourist. Luis Pinto, whom we know to be a lieutenant captain and 42 years old, was a tall, well-built and elegant man. His elegance was serious, fitting for his age. He had dark, wide-open eyes, a smart and kind gaze, refined manners, and a natural air of quiet superiority. That was his appearance. His character was no different. He had no bad qualities, or if he did, they were small ones. He had been a widower for 10 years, and had only one daughter from his marriage, whom he had sent to a boarding school. That child was the center of his life. Sometime earlier, because of health problems, he had taken a 1-year leave and traveled to Europe. He had returned about 15 days before this dinner. Night had now fully arrived. The guests went back inside the house, where some played games, others talked, and some listened to music. The party would have ended like any other for the officer, if not for the arrival of a guest no one had expected, especially not him. This unexpected visitor was a woman. The commander's wife hurried to greet her. Donna Madalena Soares entered the room with the graceful step of a goddess, her calm and serious expression adding to her elegance. Among the guests who had never met her before, a quiet wave of curiosity spread through the room. She wore dark clothes, fitting for a recent widow, and though she was only 30 years old, her beauty stood out. With everyone's attention fixed on the newcomer, no one noticed the effect she had on Luis Pinto. He was both surprised and delighted, deeply moved in fact, and for a moment he remained frozen in his chair. A few minutes later, he stood and walked over to her. "Have I grown so old that you no longer recognize me?" he asked. Madalena shivered slightly and turned to look at him. "Oh," she said. "You haven't seen each other in a long time?" the commander's wife asked. "A century," Madalena replied. "6 years at least," said Luis Pinto. "Maybe even more." "I heard you just came back from Europe." "A few days ago, yes." "And your husband?" "I am a widow." "Oh." Their conversation paused here. While they were silent, we can explain that Madalena had married at 20, left the city 4 years later and moved to one of the northern provinces. She had returned only 10 months ago, after her husband's death. Luis Pinto had not known about the man's passing. The two old friends exchanged just a few more words. The conversation soon became general again, and the evening passed like the others, without anything unusual happening. When Madalena was ready to leave, she told the captain that her home was on Rua das Mangueiras. "I'll come visit you soon," he said. "You'll be kind to come," she replied, "and to tolerate an old woman." Lieutenant João Ferreira stood by the window, staring at the rain-soaked street below. His mind, however, was far away, lost in memories that refused to stay buried. He had seen many things in his life, but nothing stirred him quite like the sight of Madalena. She had walked into that gathering like a ghost from another time, and for a moment he forgot how to breathe. He remembered her clearly, though the years had tried to blur the edges of her image. Back then, she had been the kind of woman who could stop a conversation just by entering a room. Not because she demanded attention, but because everyone gave it to her willingly. And now, years later, she was back, still beautiful, still graceful, still the same Madalena. Luis Pinto, his old friend, had been the first to speak when she arrived. "Oh," he had said, and the sound had echoed in everyone's minds. No one could blame him. Madalena was not just beautiful, she was magnetic. Her eyes held stories, and her smile was soft, like a memory you didn't want to forget. After she left, the room filled with praise. Everyone talked about her elegance, her poise, the way she carried herself. But João stayed quiet. He watched her go, and something inside him shifted. He knew then that nothing would be the same again. When Luis left the commander's house that night, he wasn't the same man who had walked in. He moved slowly, as if his thoughts were heavier than his body. All he could think was, "What is this?" After so many years, he had not expected to see her again. And yet, there she was, Madalena, the widow, still as radiant as she had been in his youth. The idea followed him home. It danced in his mind as he tried to sleep, whispering to him in the dark. The next morning, even before he opened his eyes, he thought of her. 2 days later, he kept his promise and visited her at Rua das Mangueiras. He dressed carefully, more carefully than usual. He checked himself in the mirror more than once, and not out of vanity, but out of hope. He wanted to know if the boy she once knew was still hiding somewhere in the man he had become. Madalena greeted him warmly. Her smile was the same, and it made his heart ache. She was not alone. A small boy, about 6 years old, clung to her side. Her son. And sitting nearby was an older woman, her late husband's aunt, who had come to Rio de Janeiro with her and never left. They talked about many things, nothing too serious, nothing too deep. But even the most ordinary topics seemed to glow when Madalena spoke. She had a way of making every word feel important, every moment feel meaningful. Time passed quickly. Luis left that first visit feeling lighter than he had in years. 5 or 6 days later, he returned. This time, Madalena was not home. He tried not to show his disappointment, but it was there, hidden behind his polite smile. He ran into her later, on Rua dos Arcos, her son holding her hand. "I just came from your house," he told her. "Did you?" she replied. "I went to visit some old friends." "From 6 years ago?" "No." She laughed. from 10. Luis Pinto stopped when he saw her. He looked into her eyes and asked, "Do you still remember the past?" His voice gave the words a special meaning. "My memory doesn't forget love," she answered calmly. He nodded, said goodbye, and walked away. Her reply didn't say everything, maybe not even the most important part. Still, he felt satisfied just for having asked. The past he was talking about, as you might have guessed, was an old love story between them. It had happened before either of them got married. But it wasn't a light, careless romance. It was deep and strong. Madalena's father had always been against them being together. He told everyone he would never accept Luis, and did everything he could to keep them apart. He used every trick, every threat, every bit of power he had. But Luis didn't give up. Just to see Madalena from a distance, or catch a smile, even a sad and lonely one, he would walk through the garden of her house, not caring that her father had people watching for him. He went to every theater, every party, every place where there was even a chance of seeing her. They wrote letters secretly, despite all the rules her father tried to enforce. Madalena stayed strong for as long as she could. She tried everything her heart could think of, begging, crying, locking herself in her room, even refusing to eat. But in the end, after nearly 2 years of fighting, her father won. She married the man he chose, a good and honest man, who at that time seemed like the worst person in the world to her. Luis took the pain like someone who had already shown how much he could suffer. Later, he married someone else. Years passed. They lost touch. Their lives went in different directions. That was the past. And it was full of memories, some sad, some sweet. The best way to forget the sadness and bring back the sweetness was to pick up where they had left off. To restart a love that had never really ended. To finally marry her now, when there was nothing left to stop them. Luis went to Madalena's house the day after they met. He found her teaching her son his lesson, with the book open on her lap. "Let me finish this page?" she asked him. Luis nodded yes, and she finished the boy's lesson. While she leaned forward, following the lines of the book, the Navy officer watched her in the daylight, studying the face he had loved so deeply 10 years ago. Her youthful freshness was gone, but her beauty had not faded. If anything, it had deepened into something more serious. Her eyes were the same, large, dark, and sparkling. Her hair was still thick and brown. Her neck was swan-like, her hands delicate like a princess, her figure slim, her movements graceful and soft. The widow dressed simply, without decoration or extra details, which gave her beauty a quiet dignity and a kind of gentle seriousness. Luis was completely absorbed in watching her. He compared the cheerful, lively young girl he once knew with the caring, mature mother in front of him now, and both images blended together in his mind. The lesson ended. Dona Madalena turned to the captain with the ease of someone familiar, but still with a hint of nervousness that came from the situation. Their conversation was short and a little awkward. Naturally, they talked about the past, but both avoided touching either in thought or words on the events that had broken their bond years ago. "You think I look old, don't you?" the officer asked when Madalena mentioned how time had changed him. "Not old," she replied with a smile. "Just not as young as before." "That's only fair," he said. "I'm in the evening of my life. You're still at noon." "Don't forget," she said, I've also lost the freshness of youth. That's not the same, he answered. Look at these gray hairs. Life hasn't been easy for me. It's not just the years, it's everything I've been through. Madalena sat with her son on her lap, her fingers gently brushing through his hair. Across from her, Luis Pinto leaned forward, his eyes soft with something unspoken. A cor dos cabelos não pruva nada, she said suddenly, almost as if trying to stop a confession before it could escape. Her voice was calm, but there was a quiet urgency behind it. It's true, Luis replied. My father's hair turned white before he was 30. Nature has its own strange ways. She looked at him for a moment, then asked, Do you plan to return to Europe? No, he said. I don't think he'll ever go back. She tilted her head. Isn't it beautiful, though? Like people say? He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. It depends on who's looking. To me, it's unbearable. She seemed surprised. You've never wanted to see it? I always have, she admitted. For people like us, born in the Americas, Europe feels like a dream, a kind of longing. I think it's natural. And not impossible, he said. Just a few days on the sea. She nodded, then looked down at her son. Now, I need to focus on raising him. How old is he? Luis asked. 6. He's very mature for his age. Yes, she said, smiling as she looked at her boy. He is. She said it with pride, with love, her eyes soft and full of warmth. When she looked up again, she caught Luis staring at her. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then she lowered her gaze, a little shaken by the way his eyes still affected her. The silence that followed wasn't long, but it felt heavy. Luis stood up. I don't know if he'll see you again, he said. Why not? She asked, clearly interested. As a Navy officer, I can't promise anything. I might leave tomorrow. But if you don't leave, I'll come see you, if you'll let me. I'd be happy to, she said quietly. He left. Madalena stayed seated, her son still beside her, but her mind was far away. She was thinking of the past, of moments long gone but suddenly alive again because of him. Finally, she shook her head, as if trying to clear it, and kissed her son's forehead with deep affection. The two of them didn't meet again for a whole week. But after that time had passed, they found themselves together once more, this time at the commendator's house, where people had gathered for the evening. Lieutenant Luis Pinto had been waiting for this moment, curious to see what effect his long absence might have had on the widow. He wondered if she still carried, beneath her calm exterior, even a small spark of the old flame. But Madalena was just as curious. Their eyes met, and in that glance both asked silent questions with no immediate answers. The officer decided it was time to be more direct. After a waltz ended, they walked together to a quieter room. Would you like to rest for a moment? He asked. Just for 2 minutes, she replied. They sat on a sofa near the window. Luis Pinto moved to close it. No, Madalena said. I don't mind the air. I'll sit here and enjoy the moonlight. It's lovely tonight. Lovely, he repeated, almost without thinking. But you would have preferred to keep dancing, right? Me? Not at all. I can see you enjoy dancing. Well, it depends on the occasion. I do enjoy it. I admit that. My condition doesn't allow me to dance as I used to, but I still manage a step or two. Do I look ridiculous? Of course not, Luis Pinto insisted. Madalena continued to talk about the dance, the night, and the gathering. Now and then, they fell into silence, sometimes short, sometimes longer. During one of these pauses, Luis Pinto smiled gently and said, "We're quiet now, like two lovers." "That's true," Madalena smiled. "Who knows?" The officer whispered, almost afraid. "Maybe it's not just pretend." She smiled again, but said nothing. Then she stood up. He offered his arm, and they began to walk together. They strolled for quite a while, longer than they realized, caught up in their conversation. It was only when Madalena decided to go home that they parted. As he walked alone, Luis Pinto thought to himself, "Why hold back? Why not just say what I feel? Why not face this and get it over with? There's no real obstacle here. We're both free. We have a past. Yes, I must tell her everything." It was easier decided than done. Luis Pinto tried 3 times to speak plainly about the matter, but each time he only managed to start. Not because he lacked emotion, it was more like weakness. Maybe his heart did not give his tongue the strength it needed. For her part, the widow had understood the Navy officer's intentions, but it would not be right for her to make the first move. She could help things along, yes, but even she felt her tongue grow weak. One day, though, after a dinner at a friend's house, Luis Pinto found an open door and stepped through it. They were a little apart from the rest of the guests, although still in the same room. Nothing brings a man to life and makes him open up, like a good meal, no matter his mood or doubts. Luis Pinto had eaten well, even though he was in love. From this, we can guess that love is one thing, and eating another. Since the heart and the stomach are not the same, both can work at the same time. As for Madalena's appetite, I won't say much. Usually, heroines in novels eat little or not at all. People do not expect a woman to feel deep love and also enjoy baked rice. Heloise, if she ever existed, likely never tasted turkey stuffing or egg rolls. So I won't say for sure whether Madalena had eaten well. I will only say that she had not eaten badly. The two were chatting about things that had nothing to do with the heart when Luis Pinto finally asked, "Have you never thought about marrying again?" Madalena shivered slightly. "Never," she said after a short pause. "And you won't marry again?" Silence. "I don't know. Everything depends." Another silence. "Depends?" the officer asked. "Yes, depends on the circumstances." "What kind of circumstances?" Luis Pinto asked, smiling. Madalena smiled too. "Well," she said, "it's the circumstances that lead to all marriages." He stayed quiet. A few minutes passed before he said, "Now that I think of it, you could have been married by now." Luis Pinto looked surprised. "What do you mean?" The question seemed to unsettle him, and he didn't answer right away. The widow repeated what she had asked. After a pause, he finally said, "It's better not to talk about the past. This time, It was her turn to stay silent. Neither of them spoke for a while. Then she stood up to talk to the lady of the house. About 20 minutes later, they found themselves sitting next to each other again. "Won't you answer me?" he asked. "Answer what?" "What I said earlier. You didn't ask me anything." "That's true, but I made a comment. Do you agree with it?" She didn't say anything. "I guess you don't agree," the Navy officer said. "Who told you that?" "Oh, so you do agree?" Madalena made a move showing she was getting annoyed. "I didn't say anything," she replied. "That's true, but I made a conclusion." "You made the wrong conclusion." "There's nothing to conclude because I didn't say anything, just stayed quiet." Luis Pinto looked disappointed. She tried to comfort him. "It's always bad to talk about the past," she said. "Maybe," he murmured. "If it was sad, why bring it up again? And if it was happy, why make the present moment more painful?" "True, but what if we could bring it back?" "Bring it back?" "Yes." "How?" "You should ask yourself." "I already did." "Oh," Luis Pinto said, surprised. The widow realized he thought she had been thinking about this before, and she felt she should clear things up. "I asked myself just now," she said. "And what did you answer?" "I answered, I will tell you." Then someone came to ask her to sing. Madalena stood up, and Luis Pinto wished the invitation and the music would disappear. Luckily for him, Madalena sang like an angel. He was deeply moved by her voice. That night, however, he couldn't find a moment alone with her again. Maybe the situation didn't allow it, or maybe she was avoiding him. The officer felt deeply discouraged. But just as he was leaving, something happened that gave him great hope. Luis Pinto went home happy that day. The widow's final look had lingered on him, quiet and intense, and her parting word, perhaps, had meant everything, or nearly so. The next morning, he returned to visit her. She greeted him with the sweetest of her smiles. "Say the word from yesterday again," he said. "What word?" Madalena asked. He frowned, but didn't answer. Just then, her son entered the room. She kissed him with the tenderness of a mother. "Want me to repeat the word?" she asked. "I wanted to hear it." "Well then, say it." "Go ahead." "Can the past return?" "Perhaps." "Why not say yes?" "There's nothing we can be sure of. But happiness is in our hands." "What do you mean?" "That we can be happy." "Oh, I am very happy," she said, kissing her son again. "Happy, all three of us." "You aren't?" "Not completely." It was almost a proposal. The story could have ended right there, if stories could ever end so neatly. But this one didn't end, not yet, at least. Luis didn't ask her to marry him. He felt certain it would happen eventually. He was a Navy officer, steady and calm, but not eager to rush into something that seemed so natural. His days had become gentle and joyful. He visited her almost every day, or at least 3 times a week. They met often at gatherings, and there they talked freely. What was strange was that they never spoke about their feelings, not like other lovers might. They didn't even mention marriage. They simply enjoyed each other's company. Both were warm, clever, and easy to talk to. Luis realized this one night as he walked home. 2 months had passed since their last conversation when the commendador asked him a question that caught him off guard. "So it seems Dona Madel and I be getting married?" "Married? I wouldn't be surprised. She's young and beautiful." "That's true enough. But who's the groom?" "Dr. Alvarez." The moment he heard the name, Luis Pinto's eyes widened. "Dr. Alvarez," he said, in a tone that made the commander wonder if there was something more behind it. "You're surprised?" the commander asked. "I had no idea," Luis replied. "That Dr. Alvarez everyone's talking about now, and who actually has nothing to do with this, was just a doctor from the north," the commander explained. Luis Pinto hadn't known anything about it before, and even now the commander's words didn't seem entirely clear. There had been no official engagement, and on the surface, not even a real romance. Still, Luis tried to pay attention and saw nothing unusual. 2 weeks later, he approached Madalena. "Did you know what people are saying?" he asked. "What are they saying?" she replied. "They told me you were getting married to Dr. Alvarez." Madalena didn't answer. Her silence was awkward. Luis began to think the rumor might be true. And it was. 1 month after that conversation, Madalena officially told her friends and family that she was marrying Dr. Alvarez. Luis Pinto should have been heartbroken sad at least. But he wasn't. Not even a little. He simply chose not to attend the wedding, out of what he called a personal principle. And the only thing he really regretted was missing the wedding cakes and snacks. So, what's the lesson here? Maybe this: loving someone deeply one day doesn't mean you'll love them forever. And a man can make sacrifices for a woman's happiness, only to watch her walk away later without pain or anger.
Thank you for listening so far. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like our channel and click the bell to be notified whenever a new book is read. Have you heard of Machado de Assis? Machado de Assis, born in Rio de Janeiro in 1839, is considered one of the greatest writers in Brazilian literature and a master of psychological realism. He was a novelist, poet, playwright, and short story writer whose works explore the complexities of human behavior with irony, subtlety, and deep introspection. Among his most famous novels are Dom Casmurro, which questions truth and memory, and the posthumous memoirs of Brás Cubas, a satirical narrative told by a deceased man. Machado's literature often reflects the contradictions of Brazilian society, addressing issues like race, class, power, and identity in a sophisticated yet accessible style. Despite being born into poverty and facing racial prejudice, Machado de Assis rose to become the president of the Brazilian Academy of Letters and a symbol of literary excellence. His sharp wit and profound observations about society and the human soul make his works timeless and universally relevant. Today, he is recognized not only as a Brazilian icon, but also as a world-class author whose legacy continues to influence generations of writers and thinkers. Machado de Assis shows us that literature can be both elegant and critical, intimate and universal, humorous and profound. His stories remain as powerful and thought-provoking today as they were more than a century ago. Machado is a treasure of world literature, and through his voice, we discover the infinite layers of the human experience.